Happy Hanukkah, dragons! It's Question Tuesday, the day I answer real questions from real dragons. I'm so excited to be here. I've got some great questions today. We're going to get right to it. So Frankie wants to know when science started. Frankie, that's a tough one. Here's the thing. In order to understand when science started, you've got to understand what science is. Now, when you guys think of science, and when a lot of people think of science, they think of fun, exciting experiments and mixing chemicals and doing explosions and all of that really exciting stuff that we do with science. But science itself isn't those things. What science is a method of testing things in order to understand more about the world around us. And when you think of science that way, it's really easy to realize that it started as soon as we did. As soon as humans started exploring the world around them, started questioning the things they saw, started trying to learn more, that was all science, whether they called it science or not. Now, if you're talking about the origins of the word science, Frankie, submit your question again, and I'll answer that one, even though it's not really a science question. I am kind of a word nerd. Our next question comes from Rhett. In Rhett's class, we did an experiment that I'll show you in a minute, but his question is why the light changes color in this experiment. Okay, so for this experiment, I had each table have a flashlight, which they pointed at the ceiling of the lab. Then I had them put a cup of water on top of the flashlight and light up that flashlight to watch that light shine on the ceiling. Next, I came around to each group and put a little bit of yellow food coloring into the cup. I want you to watch what happens when I do. Now, I don't know how well you can see it in the video, but this water has turned yellow now. And what's very interesting about this is that the light on the ceiling has changed too. Next, I put a little bit of red food coloring into the cup, and we got to watch it change colors again. It's a slightly slow process, but you can see it's starting to turn a little more orange. And when we look at the light on the ceiling, you can see that it's a lot more red. The reason the color of the light shining through this object changes is that the color of the object has changed. When you shine a light through something translucent, that object only lets that color of light through. The flashlight's light hasn't changed colors at all, but the light that makes it to your eyes has. So it's really interesting how light changes color based on what its environment is like. Our next question comes from Matthew. Matthew wants to know if gravity affects everything. Does it affect light? Which is such a good question because it does, Matthew, it does. You might remember in our last video, we were talking about how if things are going fast enough, they'll go really far as they're going down. Well, the same is true of light. Light just moves so crazy fast that it's hard to even notice it going down as it goes. Well, when we do notice it is when it's traveling really crazy long distances through space. In fact, that's how we've made some of our biggest discoveries of objects in space, is we've noticed the light around them bending and moving and changing. It's why light gets sucked into a black hole. Now, if you don't know anything about black holes, what they are is an object has become so dense, so full of gravity, that it kind of sinks way on down in that space-time continuum. It pulls everything into it. It pulls everything into it so much that light going past it gets pulled down at the same speed it's going past and gets sucked straight into that black hole. Our final question is also about light. Connor wants to know, how can the sunlight be so effective in our universe? And that's a really good question. I think, and I haven't checked with Connor, so Connor, if I get your question wrong, correct me and I will answer it again, I promise. But I think what he's asking is why the sun shines so brightly here. Why does it heat things? Why do plants grow with it? And Connor, I could make a whole video about sunlight and how interesting it is. So if you have more questions at the end of this one, definitely ask them. Maybe I'll make a whole video about sunlight. But the reason the sun is so effective for our planet is because it's so close. You see, there's something called the Goldilocks zone. When a planet is in that perfect zone, it has just enough heat for things to survive, but not enough to fry them. If the Earth were closer to the sun, by what we would consider a lot, but compared to the size of the universe is not very much, if it were a little bit closer to the sun, it'd be too hot for us to survive. If it were a little further away from the sun, it'd be too cold. If you look to the planets immediately closer and immediately further away, neither of them can sustain life. We can't even live there. We haven't built the technology yet to survive there. So it's just that the Earth is perfectly in that perfect spot for us to exist at all, which kind of makes you feel special, doesn't it? I feel pretty special knowing that I'm in exactly the right place at exactly the right time to know all of you. Okay, that's enough sappiness for one video. Happy holidays, dragons. See you next week. Okay, I know I look a little silly standing here in the dark like this, but as I was getting ready to explain how Rhett's class's experiment worked, I was walking around my classroom in the dark and realized I'm wearing a light up shirt. So I can't really record this part of the video with this shirt on, so I'm going to change into my t-shirt, and I'll put this in at the end of the video so that you guys can laugh at me. Bye, dragons.